Let's get started. So welcome to the Startup Tank. And my name is not Matt Ward. My name is Jenna Lee. Personally, I'm an angel investor, I also lead a climate tech syndicate, and I work with Matt at Forward VC. And since Matt can't be here for the entire show today, so I'm stepping in. My first time, so please forgive me for any hiccups or just laugh about it. And today we have three investor panelists. We have Matthew from Anthro Ventures, who is not here yet. We also have Dennis Clark from Zeon Ventures calling in from San Francisco. We have Silas Mahner calling, representing Clean Techies podcast, calling in from New York. So I will let you guys introduce yourselves, starting with Silas.
Hi, I'm Silas Mahner, calling from New York. As she mentioned, I represent, I work as a climate tech headhunter for Next Wave Partners, serving climate tech and sustainability companies, and then also am the host and founder of the Clean Techies podcast, where we interview climate tech founders and VCs, and I'm super happy to be here.
Great. And Dennis, a few words about yourself and Zeon Ventures.
Sure. Good day, everybody. It's a pleasure to be back on the tank. Thank you for having me. My name is Dennis Clark. I'm an investment director at Zeon Ventures. Zeon Ventures invests across advanced materials, energy transition, sustainability, and human health. We primarily do Series A and Series B investments in companies in North America and Europe at this stage. We're also the corporate venture capital arm of Zeon Corporation, a large elastomer, polymer, and specialty materials company headquartered in Japan, but with operations globally. Looking forward to all of the pitches today. Thank you very much for having me.
Welcome, Dennis. And a few brief words about Forward VC. So please check our website to access a really super great VC database on all things climate tech. And if you're not part of our Climate Techies WhatsApp group, there are an abundance of various ones based on your interest and topic. Feel free to join those in WhatsApp. That you can also find the link and all those informations on forward.vc. And for the Startup Tank, the format. So tonight we have 5 different startups. They will all have 5 minutes to pitch, followed by 15 minutes of Q&A. And at the end of the session tonight, each of our panelists will be selecting their favorite of the evening. Okay, so we can get started. How about with Ibin Hu?
Hey, thank you. Okay, then I will share my screen. Please let me know, can you see it? Okay, great. Hello, everyone. My name is Ibin Hu. I am co-founder of BitVisor. BitVisor is a renewable energy company from Germany. We acquire free land plots in Norway and develop them into renewable energy sites. How does it work? So the B2B customer come to us if they want to utilize infrastructure for powered land. What we earn here is the commercial rate on the electric power. The B2B customer can also come to us to utilize the data center co-location services. In this case, we will also earn a commission rate on the electric power plus a service fee. Both service fee and commission rate on the electric power are monthly. So we earn a recurring revenue, plus our return rate is extremely low because all the projects here are infrastructure projects. Since incorporation in the middle of 22, BitVisor has already brought the first renewable site online with 6 megawatt capacity. So it generates turnover since March 23, since online, and the cash flow of this site will be positive from this month. In our roadmap, we'll have totally 39 megawatt megawatt capacity till Q2 24. According to our market research, the renewable energy market and green infrastructure market will both experience a growth of between 250% and 350%. Well, here you can see an overview of all the projects we're having. Apart from the first site, which is already online this year, we've acquired 4 additional sites in different capacity sizes. All of them will give us total capacity of 39 megawatt and generate an annual revenue of 14 million euro from 2024. Here you can have a glance on our first site with 6 megawatt in Gopne. Gopne is a small town in the middle northern part of Norway. So it is the biggest 100% liquid-cooled HPC installation in Europe. And we use the wasted heat in the site to support the R&D activities in the company. Very proud to introduce our latest site next to the Oslo city. The location is like not far away from the city center. And we have 2 layers in the whole site. The first layer is the rooftop solar park, which have 2.7 gigawatt hour power production per year. And the second layer is the floor beneath the 4th floor with about 5 megawatt power capacity for AI workloads. So in this building, we achieved a circular economy with that we consume our own solar energy in our own data center to support AI applications. So this site will only focus on AI applications, co-location services, and GPU as a service. In the long run, as a co-founder, I would say all of us, the co-founders, seek carbon negativity. So what we are doing now with the wasted heat from the AI workloads is to support the R&D activities. Here, we've already negotiated with our strategic partner to use the waste heat to grow agile production. The products will be used in 2 ways. We can use in fish farm in Norway or use them to grow fertilizer. So in the long run, we'd like to achieve a negative CO2 emission. Short introduction to the co-founding team. We are 4 co-founders with profound industry experiences since 2015 in renewable energy, data center, cloud infrastructure industries. All of us, we've achieved 141 megawatt electric capacity in total. A fun fact is in 2021, our CEO, Michel Boutilly, was in the Bloomberg TV for his contribution in renewable energy data sites. Now, BitVisor is raising Series A with 11 million euro. The fund will be used and focus in the construction work for all the new sites and to accelerate the company growth. So if you have any question, please raise your hand and feel free to reach out. Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. Perfect timing. So Dennis or Silas, if you have any questions or comments.
Sure, I'll start. So thank you very much for the presentation, Yibing. A very interesting business and solution. A few questions on kind of what you're doing in a little bit more detail on the energy side. So you mentioned solar. Are you looking across different types of energy sources? And when we think about you're coupling the data centers with these renewable energy installations, how do we think about kind of reliability and flexibility since you're leveraging renewable energy sources? Are you using energy storage? And how do you manage the storage and distribution for continuous operations of the sites? Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. Very good question. So, so the solar park we're using is connected to the grid. We know that the solar energy is not constant. So in the evening, there will be no energy. So what we do is we do not use energy storage, which is the battery, and because it's capital intensive. And so we use the solar power in the morning, and in the evening, we use the grid power. So another fun fact is in Norway, 99.6% of the energy are renewable. That's why the whole data center is renewable.
Got it. Thank you. And just one quick follow-up on that. So when we think about the business model and the cost structure of your business, can you share a little bit more about how you generate revenue with a customer over time and what the cost structure looks like?
Yeah, sure. At the beginning, the capital will be invested in infrastructure build out. So at the beginning, the CapEx will be very high at the beginning. Since after the whole construction work is done, so we will onboard a customer. For instance, we have a 5 megawatt site. The customer, for example, Dennis, you come to us, you say, okay, I would like to utilize 2 megawatt for hydrogen production. So you will bring your production infrastructure, production plan to our site, and it's a plug and play. So in the moment when your production plan is on, we'll calculate the commission rate on the electricity power. That's how we earn money from the customer. So if, for instance, Dennis, you also have data center racks, you want it to be hosted. So we are also calculate in the same rate plus a service fee, because we have to pay our staff in the site, pay for the civilian system and so on.
Great, thank you.
One question from me here would be just to kind of clarify this. It's not super clear to me. Are you developing projects and then trying to sell them, or developing them on behalf of your clients for their own purpose? So for more commercial and industrial uses?
We have both. So generally we develop the project and then we onboard the customer. So we own the project. There are also cases that, for instance, for the data center case, we also have long-term customer, they want to utilize data center customized for them for, let's say, 5 years for the whole company. In this case, we will co-develop it with the customer. That's, I would say, a very special case. In this case, the customer, with high probability, they will finance a part of the project as a co-ownership.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so then I guess my other question would be, what is the differentiating factor, or why they would use your service versus another for this particular project, and why particularly come to you?
Yeah, sure. So the partnership in Norway guarantees us the exclusivity of power price and of the location for cooling, because why hosting in Norway is because the northern the site is, the less power will be used for cooling. First, we have the location. Second, we have a guaranteed low power price when we purchase the power. So if we have a very low purchase power, and the power that we sell to the customer will be also lower. That's the two most significant unique selling point.
Okay, that's understood. And in terms of the latter part of the presentation with utilizing the heat, can you explain that more? I wasn't quite able to understand is this something that's on every project you're going to be utilizing this way? Was that just a particular nuance for that project? Bit of technical difficulties.
Silas, sorry, could you please repeat your question?
Yeah, no worries. The question is on the utilization of the heat on the projects. You mentioned that at the ending. I wasn't sure if is this something that is going to be implemented onto every project because you have a certain focus on, data centers. Could you kind of explain the scalability of that and help us understand a little bit better?
You mean the scalability of the wasted heat usage, or the scalability of the project?
Yeah. How does this play into your project development? Is this a particular nuance that you can bring that other companies don't? I just didn't quite understand why that was brought up in the situation if you're developing renewables projects.
Well, in particular to the wasted heat for use cases, because currently the policies in Norway, they support circular economy, which means everything that is, for instance, wasted heat can be used, for example, to heat the water for the civil, for the living community. That is, we transport heat to the water company. So they usually will heat the water from 0 to 70. With our heat, they heat it from 40 to 70, which gives a save their cost and save their energy. That's one case. In the other case, in the urgent case for the fish farm, that's also a business model we want to achieve, that we sell the energy for other industries. So that we monetize wasted heat, and which also means that we have other income in our portfolio, which balances the whole portfolio risk.
Understood.
Yeah, it sounds like a no-brainer for these industrial sites. What are your biggest challenges of today?
I think it's construction work. It's sometimes there are delays in the construction work, and the weather conditions in the winter are not always predictable. That is the biggest challenge we've experienced so far.
Okay, and how are you solutioning for that?
I would say plan enough buffer in budgeting and plan enough time.
Okay, great. And in terms of your raise, what are the major milestones that you're looking at?
You mean after Series A? Because in Series A it's 11. Then we'll reach the next company valuation, and the Series B we haven't defined yet, but we know that after Series B we would like to do the IPO.
Okay, and then in terms of like business or business milestones or operational milestones, how have you defined them?
Of course, we will acquire more sites, and strategically, this portion of the sites will be in renewable energy production, for instance, in hydrogen, in solar farm, and so on.
Okay, that's clear. All right, sounds good. If everyone is clear on BitVisor, then I suggest we move on to the next startup. Sounds good? Okay, thank you very much, Even, for your presentation. And I would like to welcome Rainions to pitch their startup, which is about patented molecules to render air pollution and CO2 harmless.
All right, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. I'm calling in from Los Angeles. Had to get up early for this one, but happy to meet everybody. So let me tell the story first before I'm not sure if the slides are necessary. About 4 or 5 years ago, well, first of all, I should say I'm an angel investor, and sometimes I'm the first investor in new technology. And I could talk about my history, or you can look it up on LinkedIn, but nevertheless, about 4 or 5 years ago, a retired military gentleman named Mark DiCarlo contacted me and asked me if I'd be the first investor in his new company, which was unnamed at that time. He had been one of the inventors of IMESA, which is when he was at the US Pentagon as an inventor, he invented a system for security for every US military base worldwide. He had to retire for health reasons, and he decided he wanted to solve air pollution. And so he literally read, and this is typical of Mark DiCarlo and the way he thinks, he read 1,100 white papers on what everybody in the world had been doing or was doing in terms of air pollution. He himself is not a gifted inventor. Think of him more as like Sherlock Holmes, like a detective trying to figure out the solution and what everybody is up to and how to put it all together. So when he approached me, he sent me this document that was like 1,000 pages long with all of his notes, and as an investor, like I barely like seeing a deck that's even 10 slides long, so I wasn't sure what to make of Mark. But he talked me into like understanding that he had discovered a combination of ingredients that had previously been tested by multiple other people, but never put together in the ways that he was doing. And he had filed a patent and he needed help. So I was intrigued by Mark himself. Like when I invest in people or in companies, I'm oftentimes investing in teams or the people, not just what they're doing. I found that basically team is absolutely critical if I'm not going to lose my money. So in this case, I thought Mark DiCarlo, even though he'd never run a business before, he had been literally in the military for 20, 30 years. I don't even remember how long. I wanted to basically see if I could build a team around what he was doing. And I was very curious whether he was right or not, because what he was claiming made no sense to me from like a true investor perspective, because he was saying, I've solved air pollution. I've solved how to deal with CO2. So, these are really huge claims. So I started to build a team. We invested some money. I originally took his concepts to the University of California at Riverside, a university here that has all the testing equipment. If you want to sell a car in California, you have to go through this university or 2 other locations to be tested and certified. So they had multiple buildings, professors, smart people who understand air pollution better than I was ever going to be able to do. I brought basically Mark DiCarlo to the university, and I said, will you be able to write us do some sort of an analysis on what Mark is doing, and essentially a feasibility study. And we paid for a feasibility study through the professors and a team of students that went and dissected what Mark DiCarlo had created. And shockingly to me, they came back and said, whoa, this might work. So I was like, wow, okay, what does this mean? So at the core of it is a coating. It is literally a coating of ingredients that are easy to obtain around the world. These minerals are not hard to find. In fact, the main one is tourmaline. And there is so much tourmaline that is not being utilized for any industry worldwide that this is very inexpensive raw materials. Imagine a coating inside of an exhaust system, and that coating also has within it the ability to transmute molecules from bad to good, including breaking the CO2 molecule without any additional electricity. So when you look at what Bill Gates has invested in, and a bunch of these other folks have invested in the CO2 space, they need a massive amount of energy in order to accomplish moving CO2 from its current condition into some sort of a, housing condition or breaking the molecule. The CO2 molecule is extraordinarily strong, but we basically, decided we were going to pay for independent tests and see if we could actually find out if this is going to work or not. So long story short is we have now done 6 independent tests, and we have proven that we basically are eliminating up to 96% of the pollutants, and we are also able to impact and eliminate over 90% of the CO2. And part of our challenge right now is that we've been making the coating basically in a house, in a kitchen. We haven't been doing it in a lab. We're not doing it at scale. We're basically doing it just to be able to provide these different companies that are doing the independent tests for us enough material to put on any kind of an exhaust system. So imagine a car or a truck or a smokestack. We can literally line the inside of the pipe, and we can render all of the bad molecules into better or good. So where we're at right now is, and I don't need money today, but I've always been following Ward. He's somehow in my world, and he asked if I'd be interested in pitching. And I thought it would make sense to at least start to talk to this community as well. I'm going to probably be looking for some money later, but at the moment, I just raised enough for these next round of tests, because what's happened is lots of Fortune 500 companies are knocking on our door wondering what we're doing. And when they look at the test results that we have so far, they're asking us to now create math models on how we're transmuting the molecules. All the test results we've done right now to date have been, for instance, hooking up our exhaust system with our coating in it, which is an off-the-shelf muffler, basically with our coating in it, to a dirty diesel generator, for example, and just testing, first the bad going into the muffler, and then what is coming out of the muffler. And those test results were really easy for us to do, and there's lots of places we could do that at. But now we need way more sophisticated levels of testing to try and actually see how we are manipulating, modifying the molecules in the ways that we are, even though there are lots of white papers and studies on slices and dices of our technology that others had discovered, but never sort of put them all together. But those documents and those tests don't really tell the whole story. So a number
right, Mark.
sorry. Did
Sorry.
I wrap my 5 minutes? Okay. Sorry
Well,
about that.
first, I forgot to start my timer, so that was my bad. And then I got sucked into your story. So then I gave you an extra minute there.
Sorry.
But yeah, no, super interesting, and sounds like the technology really could be revolutionary, and that you have done, some tests. So yeah, I guess I'll open it up to Dennis and Silas for questions, which I suspect will probably be about how to make a business out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. We'd love to jump in. I guess the key thing, I've seen a lot of these types of companies that have, technology like not like this particular, but, something in relation to this. So I'm curious, what is your plan in the future of go-to-market? What's the strategy for making money?
It. We're just a licensing company. We basically are an IP. We've got multiple patents, and we're in conversations with everybody from ExxonMobil to Volkswagen to just lots of different companies that are also interested in the pollution space. And everybody that knows of us is watching to see how our testing goes. And we are not ready to sign a licensing deal yet. We've had a few people sniffing around whether they could get in early, but the reality is we would like to license it to everybody. We're not really keen on the idea of giving an exclusive to anybody, because we really think we're the cheapest, least expensive way to solve the climate problem at source. So where the pollution and the CO2 is being generated, we want to solve it at that particular spot with our coating. It's so simple, it's ridiculous. And this really could be quite transformative. And the coating is really cheap. I mean, we're calculating that we'll be able to not just capture CO2, but modify it into basically oxygen for $8 a ton. And I haven't heard anybody be able to figure out how to do, CO2 capture for anything that cheap. We're really looking forward to teaming with major size companies that will take our technology and develop it even further and find ways to put it into their products and pay us royalties and advances, which my background is licensing. I used to do licensing in Hollywood. And honestly, the 100+ licensing deals I've done mostly are entertainment and not technology, but I totally understand how to do licensing. And from the moment I met Mark DiCarlo, that was the plan. And that still remains the plan. Doesn't make sense for us to commercialize and scale up. Then I have to build a different team. And even though I love building teams for businesses, that's not the team I want to build right now.
So aside from the additional testing that you have to do to get proving what you need for those, parties that are interested, what would you say is the other biggest challenge that you have in the near future?
Good question. So our next biggest challenge is, and we just hired a couple of experts for coding so that we can create coatings that are going to last for quite some time and hopefully outlive the engines or the devices that they're hooked up to. But internally, we've created coatings which work for testing, but I wouldn't say that they're ready for prime time. That said, experts in the coating business seem to think that our ingredients will blend nicely with existing types of coatings. And so it's just a matter of, we do have to throw some money at this, but we do believe that this isn't reinventing the wheel. It's actually old industry that we just need to get our ingredients working. We're going to have to do some trial and error to figure out which ones work best, just to make sure that there isn't any decomposing of the coating material itself because of our minerals that we're using.
Mark, can I jump in here for a moment? Sorry,
Sure.
there's so much to unpack here. Thank you for the presentation. I too was sucked in like Gina. You had me at hello or Sherlock Holmes or something. But can you talk a little bit more, like you mentioned, like the potential long-term durability of the coating? Is this something that needs to be reapplied over time? And the second question is around how to think about a system. So if we take the automotive use case, which you described, where exactly would the coating be positioned? Is there a waste stream? Like, how should we think about how the system operates with the coating and the life cycle? Yeah.
So there's not a waste stream that we are noticing yet. There may be at a microscopic level something that we're not noticing, and that's what the next level of tests will help to inform us. And that's also one of the neat things. We are the coating in a muffler or the piping that's the exhaust system or the smokestack that's basically, at the end of whatever is the industrial process. We think the coating will last and not need to be reapplied, although if this is now attached to oil refineries, for instance, and those that equipment's going to be there for multiple decades, there's probably an argument that we're not going to be able to last that long and we may have to do something different, but we just don't know that yet. So our assumption is with regard to a car, there wouldn't be a need for a reapplication for a car. We should be able to live out the life of the car, or worst come to worst, a new muffler is put on a car and it'll be a little more expensive than a muffler that you might buy today, but there's a possibility that we might be able to eliminate the catalytic converter, and that is a huge expense for the automotive industry. So, I'm pretty sure the economic, one of the things I love about this particular company is the economics. I've invested in companies where the solutions were real, but the economics didn't really work at the end of the day. And what I'm seeing with this is that nobody that I know yet can touch us on the economic argument. I think we're the least expensive way to solve the problem. That said, there could be a dozen people in garages right now inventing things better that I just don't know about.
So there's a number of different applications and markets, as you alluded to, and all of them have their own kind of pros and cons. Knowing what you know about the technology today and the interest you've seen from different verticals, what seems like the first kind of like the low-hanging fruit in terms of what you want to go after as the target market initially?
So it'll depend on the licensees that we sign and how fast their R&D departments will sort of rev us up. But I think that portable generators, where we don't have to worry about being on a product where there's a transportation agency that has to approve, and we have to do all that like bureaucratic testing because we're an unknown. But there's equipment that we can attach ourselves to more easily and cheaply, and I'm sort of envisioning that we'll probably end up in those markets first, just because of the simplicity of adding us to them without all the jumps through the hoops to prove what we are from a safety or a government regulatory standpoint. It gets much more tricky when we get into cars and trucks here in the United States, where it's going to take time. We are talking to big automobile manufacturers. They're intrigued, but that process is going to take time. I don't think we're going to be everywhere in 1 or 2 years. I think it's going to take many years for this to sort of percolate and get out to all the places that it can go. But I have confidence that because of our 6 independent tests, we're literally eliminating almost 100%, not 100%, but we're almost eliminating all of the air pollutants and the CO2 problem. And this is with independent tests that are not as well done, and our coding is not as well prepared as I know it will get to be as we go down the path with multiple licensees whose R&D departments are going to basically take what we're doing and come up with their own ideas and try different things, and we'll hopefully be able to move from 94% removal of all of these bad elements from our atmosphere and are coming out into out of the vehicles or these machines to closer to 100%. Mark DiCarlo thinks, based on his research, we should be able to get pretty close. In recent tests, one of the tests was for NOx, which is one of the air pollutants that are coming out of automobiles. We did, I think, twice in a row get 100% reduction. So we know that by tweaking our coatings, we're able to, we just need to play around a little bit more with it. It's brand new science. There's only about 25 people in the world who are even touched this with us, and then about 100 companies that are watching us trying to figure out, are we real, or is this just, as everybody keeps saying, it sounds too good to be true, which is why we're now, the next a set of tests are going to be done at universities, because we, even though we've been hiring independent third parties, we sort of want to present ourselves back more at the university level, and then maybe take it to some national labs. But my guess is we'll have a licensee signed before we get to the national labs, and somebody will start to build prototypes and do some things with what we're doing sooner than a national lab can get it, because they're just so bureaucratic, and there's issues here with at least the US national labs. We originally built the company during the Trump administration and we thought we were going to have to base this company in Europe instead of in the United States, because the Trump administration was totally not helpful in anything that we were talking about. But then thankfully he was gone, and things are a little more normal in the United States right now, and maybe we can. But it turns out our CEO is a woman from Paris, and one of our key board members is also French, and they've been opening up communications with lots of Europeans and trying to, see where that might all lead. But most of the team is in the United States, and our CEO has located to Silicon Valley, and she's, thinking that we're gonna become the next big thing. So we'll see how all this plays out, but I do believe that Europe is going to play a huge role in what we do. I think this is, I don't know, I think now the US government might start getting involved in this. We've reached out to some government people in the last year, and they are intrigued by what we're doing and would like to see the next set of test results. And so I recently raised some serious amounts of money to pay for these last tests. I don't think we'll need to do any more tests after the next round. We think we're done. We're about to eliminate the ability to keep testing. We'll have math formulas for what's happening with the molecules inside the piping system with these next tests. And that should be enough for us to move to the next, to starting to become a licensor.
All right, thank you. We've got one question. Can this coating work to change molecules in water as well?
We don't know, but it's a possibility. There is more moisture that comes through fossil fuels that end up in the exhaust system, and our ingredients do use the moisture. It's one of the keys. We have to have some moisture in the exhaust system in order for our ingredients to work. But we haven't gotten to the point where we've looked at, for instance, a marine application where the system would be actually, underwater. Don't know that yet.
Okay, thanks, Mark. And you touched on the team a little bit. Can you share a little more about who's on the team and perhaps your role, and take it away.
So I built the team. We have about, 12 or 15 people, 12 to 13 people, I think, on the team right now. So for the most part, the team is what you would expect in an early stage startup. We don't have any like rock star, multi-exit people involved just yet. We have a team of people who are very motivated to help us do we've been an R&D company basically. So we do have people that are on our advisory boards that are out of the major industries that we want to tackle, that have personal relationships. And that's one of the reasons why a bunch of these Fortune 500 and Fortune 2000 companies even know of us, is because of their relationships. But our team is likely to go through a lot of changes when we get through the R&D phase and shift to being a licensing company. But one of the things I did is I did recruit Joe Newlight, who I'm partners with. We built a hydropower plant in Honduras about 8 years ago together. It was a very interesting project. It's a 6 megawatt project. And Joe has previously had major exits in 2 companies that he built, one to Amazon, and the other was a major licensing company in Hollywood. So, in fact, it was the largest licensing company in Hollywood with regard to digital media that would be used in films or in news agencies. He sold that company, and then I called him up and I said, Joe, I need you to be chairman of Rainions. So I do have Joe in the company because he's going to develop our licensing software model so we can track and communicate and do this worldwide. And he's also I can say one of the most ethical and nicest guys that I know, besides being very wealthy. He's the guy that never wants to be seen. He walked around India recently barefoot, looking like the poorest man in the world. He always likes to be in the background. Literally had to pull him out of that world to be chairman. And he still doesn't feel comfortable in the spotlight. He guards his anonymity, but he is brilliant, absolutely brilliant. He's exactly who I think Rainions need. So I build teams all the time for startups. It's basically the only way my investments don't go down the tubes is by making sure the teams are right, or tweaking the teams if they are having to pitch total strangers for money or pitch total strangers for sales. I find people who personally know either the investors or know the buyers, for example, and I'm always doing these kinds of additions of talent to startups in order to try and fix and get them ready so that we can sort of blaze. That's my opinion on how to accelerate a startup, is get the right team. And if the startup is stuck, it means they don't have the right team for that moment. So I'm always tinkering, and that's what I'll continue to be doing with Rainions in the future. I am on the board. I've been investing in startups for 45 years now, 48 years. And I made a lot of money in Hollywood. I worked on Lion King, Jurassic Park, all the Star Trek movies, The Simpsons, on and on and on. I also was an owner of a collectible trading card manufacturer. So Americans that bought baseball cards or football cards probably bought them from me, at least one of my companies. So I know how to build companies and be successful. And I believe in this company. But what we're missing is connections to European, investors and others that are different from the ones that our French folks have been able to generate.
So, no, I mean, I'd love to take this conversation offline. You definitely sound like somebody who has had very, very interesting experiences. But if I can wrap up, I guess, with 2 questions. What do you see? And you only have 3 minutes to answer these. What do you see as the biggest risk for your business? And yeah, you mentioned that the thing that you need help with the most right now is connections to European investors. And so that's one. And what else? What else, if you're not raising funds right now, what else can this community help you with?
I think our biggest risk is this weird phenomenon that I've seen one other time where something literally seems too good to be true. And even though you put forward all these test results, you still get that reaction of, well, this doesn't make sense. It seems too good to be true. So my fear is that the next round of tests, which have been asked for by so many of these companies that know of us, that when we do them, that they're going to still ask for more tests. And because it's hard for the R&D departments in these companies to believe the outcomes, because it makes no sense. They've never seen anything like this before, and it just doesn't register. And I fear that some of the R&D teams are going to not sign off on it so that management in these larger companies will aggressively move forward because they're fearful of it, because they can't explain the phenomenon. So hopefully we're going to be able to explain it in enough detail to get some early adopters to prove it out so everybody else comes on board. my guess is there are companies in Europe who can move this forward faster than a bunch of companies in the United States who are in some of the that are in some states like California where we have regulatory hell. Like, you know, that we are so overly regulated. So, you know, and I'm looking for an early adopter or early adopters. If any of you know any companies that might be interested in watching and observing our test results with the idea of maybe licensing our technology from us and trying to be an early adopter, that's kind of where I'm fishing for and hoping you as a community might have some opportunity. I may need to raise a little bit more money in October or December. But right now we've just been raising money on sort of a when we need it basis. So we haven't, like, I haven't gone out to raise 20 million or 50 million. I don't think I need that. We're a licensing company. I just need to get to a point where I can start signing licenses. And then, you know, there's advances and royalties. So that's kind of where I'm at with it. And if you have any ideas or thoughts on that, you know, reach out to me. My email, by the way, is mark@venturestarters.com. And I also host an event called Venture Starters. We're the largest community in the United States of both founders and investors. And we have a Zoom meeting every Wednesday with between 100 and 500 people live every week. And I'm the host of that. But, you know, I follow Ward and what you guys are doing. And so as a result, when Ward reached out at one point, I thought, yeah, I'd like to get to know his community and what you guys
Fantastic. Thank you, Mark. Well, let's just say that you definitely piqued our interest. So thank you very much for that presentation. And I'd like to invite Evo Electric, since we are talking about the decarbonization of vehicles. Not sure if they're here. Who is representing Evo Electric, accelerating the EV electrification transition? No takers. All right, then I'm going to jump to Len Bland.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, I'm good. Jumping to you because I know that you are here with us. Great. So you're with Nano Gas Environmental, and it's a company that is in recycling oil industry wastewater to save $1.60 per barrel of water and enhance oil productions by 50%. So I'll let you take it away and tell us more.
Yeah, let me jump into the presentation here.
And I'll start my timer this time.
So for this audience, I wanted to concentrate on the key market that we're going after environmentally. My name is Len Bland. I'm CEO of the company. We're raising $3.5 million for 17.5% of the company. And we clean and energize water with tiny bubbles. So I was running Concept Equity Group. We prepare entrepreneurs for investment. We provide strategic and financial advisory services. Companies come to us, and we were approached with this technology. I realized it was world changing, and I just had to be part of it. So I'm going to introduce you to one of the three markets we're going after. The three markets are all multi-billion-dollar huge markets. When you have lagoons in the US and all around the world, they get filled with sludge, they get filled with algae that could be toxic cyanobacteria, and it's getting worse because things are heating up. This is one lagoon that, this is a picture of the lagoon before we treated it. The algae was so thick, bugs were walking on top of it. And the sludge had built up so much that they were starting to build up sludge islands. And they got a quote that this 300 home community was going to have to pay $1 million to dredge the lagoon in order to fix the problem. The key part of the problem for them is that the bacteria on the bottom of the pond are starved for oxygen. There's so much sludge buildup, so much oxygen demand by those bacteria that they can't do their job. And so then you get this algae building up because it feeds on the organic waste that the good bacteria are not getting. What we do is we create nanobubbles in water. Bubbles are so small that their buoyancy is less than the surface tension of the liquid. And that means we can have 3,500 times more oxygen in the liquid. And you can see here a picture of what's going on. You get the gas actually stays in the liquid, the bubbles don't rise. And so, but they're so small, you can't see them with a light-based microscope. You can see them with laser light. And so we're shining a laser light through this water, and it's actually bouncing off clouds of nanobubbles in the water. We applied this to a lagoon in West Texas. And in just the first 4 days, the algae pretty much disappeared. Over time, we restored the lagoon. And by restoring the lagoon, I mean that we got all the bacteria to go to work and really feast on the sludge. They ate up 95% of the organic sludge. And what that meant is lagoons like this typically have, three cells: bad, better, best. And then they might release water from the best cell. Well, we were treating the bad cell, and we cleaned up so much sludge that it was like creating a whole new cell, almost 36% more space in the 3 lagoons. And the great thing was for the customer is that they didn't have to pay over $1 million for dredging. We solved their problem, and typically we would solve it for 85% less than what they would normally pay. Let me tell you a little bit about the team. I'm CEO. I was co-founder in Patricorp. Patricorp does back office processing for insurance agencies and brokerages. I sold off my investment for 600 times, and the company later on sold off part of the company just recently for 149 million. Jeff Harden is our chief scientist. He's a 6-time successful serial entrepreneur. His most notable business is he worked with the CDC, and he worked with, understood the financials as well. And he determined that people were dying from AIDS, and they needed money for their medicine, but they couldn't work. So they started buying their life insurance policies. Before that, there was no institution buying life insurance policies, and he created the first institutional business to buy life insurance policies. While he was there, they earned 67% annual rate of return. That became a multi-billion-dollar market. And Al Darzans is our PhD of molecular biology, our VP of R&D. He was a research manager, director of research at DuPont. He led research at Gas Technology Institute and was group manager at NREL. So he really understands all of this. One example lagoon, in 4 months, cleaning up a lagoon, we can save $750,000. It might cost us $130,000, giving us an 82% gross margin, while the customer could be saving a couple $1 million.
30 seconds.
Thank you. If we get just 338 of our machines out in production by the end of 5 years, we're earning $200,000 in revenue. We've got over $550,000 in lifetime revenue. We're distributing through partners, and we've got opportunities, for example, in Driggs, Idaho. Got 10 granted patents and 15 pending. And again, we're seeking 3.5 million. After our next round, the owner would have 14%. If we do make our 111 million by the end of 5 years, we'd be worth over $1 billion, and the company would be, and the investor would earn 44 times their investment, or 118% internal rate of return. We're spending the money on operations, equipment, licensing, and sales and marketing. And I mentioned there's other markets. So we have another multi-billion-dollar market in oil and gas. And here's an example of water we treated in oil and gas, taking that dirty water with oil in it and cleaning it up so it could be reusable by the oil industry. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Lynn, for that very clear presentation.
Yeah, I'd like to jump in with the first question. I think is probably most important is, can you explain, maybe it was supposed to be meant to put into the oil and gas part, but what are the climate impacts of this technology that it can have?
So the climate impacts are, we need a way to handle the water the sludge and algae in the water that's out there. And so that's why I focused on that. On the oil and gas side, it's also water play where we are cleaning up that dirty wastewater. Right now, they're putting it back down into the ground where it didn't come from, and it's causing earthquakes in Oklahoma and Texas. Oklahoma went from an average of 2 earthquakes a year in 2008 to over 800 earthquakes. There were over 3 on the Richter scale by 2016. And in addition, from a energy efficiency perspective, the oil industry spends all this money getting oil and water out of the ground. They actually pump out 7 times more water than oil, but that water doesn't become reusable. They just inject it back down into the ground. We can enable them to use that water instead of fresh water. And in addition, we can enable them to get all the oil that they've already spent the energy to pull out of the ground, so they didn't have to spend more energy to pull out even more oil when they shove oil back down into the ground.
So in essence, basically the play is to be able to save on water production. There'll be more water available based off of this technology, correct?
Yes, it's a clean water play.
Dennis, did you have any questions?
Yeah, sure. So I think obviously the technology is really core to this, and we didn't spend a lot of time on that. Can you share a little bit more about the process for creating nanobubbles, and specifically the intellectual property you have around that? Is it chemical? Is it mechanical? How should we think about the core technology behind what you're doing?
Yeah, so we have a mechanical process. What's beautiful about our technology is that we create nanobubbles without clogging. We can pass sand and grit through our system and it's not going to clog up. There are other ways to make it using membranes today, and membranes are fine if you're going to go into a greenhouse where you've done reverse osmosis on the water already, but that's not what you find in the field. You don't find that in lagoons, where typically the water available is going to be that dirty sewage water. You don't find that in the oil field, where the typical thing is going to be that produced water, that oil industry wastewater. That's what helps us stand out. So we've got patents on the technology and how to apply it. And we just got a amazing new patent on using nanobubbles going down underground to recover hydrocarbons. So it covers anybody using a process like that to bring more oil out of the ground.
Got it. So the best way to think about this, it sounds like there are other competing technologies, but this is more superior in a outdoor, non-industrialized kind of environment. That's the main target market? And
yeah, I think that's right. Anywhere where the available water is dirty water, you don't want to invest the energy that it takes to go through reverse osmosis to clean the water before you're going to use it.
Got it. So then it's not like a closed loop system, I guess, is the way I'm thinking about it. Is there continuous cycling required? Like, how does the system maintain the optimal amount of nanobubbles in the system to be able to?
It's a continuous process system. We put in more nanobubbles than anybody else, so it's straightforward for us to have enough nanobubbles in the water. The more nanobubbles we put in, the more active they are. It depends on what we're trying to do. If we're cleaning up a sewage lagoon, you just need enough oxygen in the water to be the perfect level for the bacteria. So that's another thing we do. We don't sell our equipment, we provide a service, because we think that people don't understand how nanobubbles work well enough, and there's all kinds of people applying it poorly in these industries. And so we provide a service, we provide the whole solution. So that's monitoring the oxygen, that's bringing the oxygen generator, the power, all the pieces needed to make sure we're solving the customer's problem.
Got it. And then just to piggyback on Silas's question, you're using this, like, let's say in the case of restoration of ponds and lagoons, impact to like wildlife and fish, and I guess the value proposition in that case versus dredging.
Yeah, it's beautiful. We've tested on growing fish faster, and the extra oxygen and the extra oxygen works great. After we treated that lagoon, we saw sandhill cranes and fish and turtles coming back to the lagoon, all kinds of wildlife feeding off basically the third, best lagoon.
Cool. And then just a little bit more, can you share commercial traction, like where you have done this from a geographic perspective, what type of customers you've had, and yeah.
Yeah, so I talked about the lagoon we did in West Texas. We think the south and southeast of the United States is really good because they have more of a year-round problem with these lagoons. But that doesn't mean there's not an opportunity up north. So we're looking at Idaho for a lagoon. They have some water treatment systems there. They use bubblers. The bubblers don't work because the lagoon is too shallow. So that's where nanobubbles really are fantastic. And they're looking at spending $3 million to dredge their lagoon. And we could do it we just quoted them $750,000. On the treating oil industry wastewater side, we've been out in the field. We were, if you're in the oil industry, you need to be in Texas. So we were in West Texas for treating oil industry wastewater. We actually treated at a reclamation plant where they have the dirtiest, sludgiest water because they're taking in take bottoms and truck washout water, basically slop coming from the bottoms of oil and water tanks in the oil industry. And we were actually able to clean that up. And then we've also done, a number of oil wells. So we did 4 oil wells where we improved the production on each of the wells by at least 200%. And typically, an oil well owner would be happy if we could get 25% increase from a treatment. So it's fantastic.
And continuing on the projects, to me, it's a little bit like tragedy of the commons. So how do you get these projects? Like, do you go out to seek them, or they're finding you? How are you building your pipeline?
We've had limited resources to do the kind of marketing we'd really like to do right now. So we have great connections. So for example, I'm just going to go back to the presentation I was at and spend just a touch more time on this. So for the lagoon market, we are establishing a network of, I was just there, establishing a network of distributors. So for example, Clean Infusion found this Driggs, Idaho opportunity for us. We're also connected with IMR Systems. They just signed an agreement to sell our system, and then these folks can help us provide the service that we're looking to provide. And we're adding more people as we speak. In the oil industry, our technical advisor, who is a retired chemical engineer working on oil wells all around the world, he's now has an economic interest in a new oil well company that just purchased some 4,500 existing wells. We're going in there, they have oil left in their water, and they're leaving, we think, and he thinks probably 10% of their production that they're paying somebody to take away. We'll enable them to get all that, and that's going to be worth millions for them.
One question I have is, in a particular use case of the oil and gas, will these companies be just spending less money on cleaning up the water, or will they have or will there be an additional income stream to be able to have somebody else purchase that water somehow?
Yeah, there are two income streams for the oil companies. So one is selling the oil that we're getting for them, that they were putting down hole. Another is selling the water. Oil companies use that for new drilling. And yet we're lowering the maintenance of what they're doing today, and they might not have to build a multi-million-dollar saltwater disposal well, which they're using to inject the water into the ground. On the lagoon side, it really is on the expense side. They're getting hit with regulatory requirements. They have to fix their water, and they're looking at spending millions of dollars, and we can do that for, 80% less than what they're usually quoted.
So with back to the oil and gas example, is it possible to consider doing a revenue share instead of just a service fee to then be able to scale up the revenue of the operations, based off of how much money you're saving or bringing to the table for them, because obviously they don't have to spend the money to build the plant, but then they also have additional revenue streams. That could be a different type of business model. Is there a reason why that has not been explored, or is that something you're exploring?
We've looked at that. It makes it harder to make the initial sale. We want to have more traction before we move into that on an aggressive basis. We'd be happy to do revenue share. And there's opportunities if we really wanted to partner with, or if we were raising a lot more money to buy our own oil wells and get all the benefit for ourselves, while we run oil wells, more environmentally efficient.
Great. If we have no further questions, then thank you very much, Len, for the great presentation, and good luck with your raise. And with that, I'd like to invite Eric, our last startup, to present what they're working on. Welcome, Eric.
Thank you. I'll jump right into it. All right, can you see my screen okay? Great, thank you. So my startup is Ishow. Ishow designs and builds holistic, regenerative, resilient, modular homes, technologies, and also conducts retrofits for existing homeowners and builders. The backstory behind Ishow is that I am a consumer, or was an intended consumer, of the solution that did not exist yet. I spent approximately 4 or 5 years in deep research. I guess 2 years ago, realized that despite all of the data available online, despite all the efforts of local utility providers and people who were looking to build the efforts of sustainable solutions online, that it was still extremely difficult to find a click and play option essentially for sustainability. So what Ishow is looking to do is to solve the problem of the clunkiness, the complexity, the fragmentation and costly process of adopting a sustainable lifestyle. What we do is we help owners, essentially, builders and developers, as mentioned, to adopt beyond sustainable lifestyles. We are leaning towards regeneration. And this, again, for a home system that we've created called Loop, but also doing retrofit systems in current markets in Colorado. Loop homes, and sorry guys, 1 second. There we go, I apologize. The thumbnails were hiding half of my slide. So Loop homes is our first foray, architectural and engineered design of a modular housing system that is autonomous, prefabricated, and modular. And when we use the word regenerative in our materials, in our narrative, we mean it genuinely. And by that, we mean a home that comes off the assembly line, prefabricated with zero on-site construction requirements, that also has the ability to create potable water, to grow food indoors year-round for the inhabitants of the home, eliminating human waste in the bathroom and the kitchen, and is powered by renewable energy. Also requires zero utility inputs on site, so there's no need for water, septic, sewer, or energy inputs. The footprint of each module is just over 200 square feet, and they're configurable to essentially any scale. We offer 4 pre-configured models, a studio unit at 207 square feet, plus an expandable deck, and then up to just under 1,500 square feet for our 3-bedroom Loop 3. This is a glimpse of the product. We're also taking a look at human wellness as well in our biomimetic design. This home follows the golden ratio of architectural design, Fibonacci's 12th, which is known to be an architectural design or configuration that is soothing for both people and the landscape upon which the home sits. The home is also built to not only fit within the natural landscape, but also provide panoramic vista views inside the home. So floor to ceiling windows throughout the home with R17 values. The homes are designed beyond passive well and LEED certification standards that exist today. And they also have 10-foot vaulted ceilings inside the home. So very spacious for somewhat smaller homes. We're also taking the technology stack, both partnered and proprietary within Loop's ecosystem, and we're offering it to existing clients through a program we've called Revive Retrofits. Essentially going into clients' homes, both homeowners and commercial builders and developers, and helping them to accelerate their adoption of regenerative lifestyles. Essentially what we do is we assess the home for existing energy, water, food, and wellness. And then we provide actionable recommendations based on our findings. And then, of course, we sell the customer those solutions, both, again, proprietary and partnered solutions. And then we work with them through the life of their purchases on maintenance and other applications as well. We have 3 tiers of business and revenue model. One is Loop itself, the eco-luxury home. It's currently our Tesla Roadster moment, if you will, based on the technology stack, but we are reverse engineering towards affordability within the next 18 to 20 months. The homes range from 150,000 to 850,000 plus, depending on how they're configured. We also have a consumable subscription model, including home monitoring and automation. And we're also partnered with a few global providers of sustainable solutions for consumables, including dishwasher detergent, linens, food, et cetera, et cetera. So essentially making it very realistic to be able to click on a purchase button on a website, order the home of your choice, but also have everything required to live a sustainable life delivered at the same time of your home.
30 seconds.
30 seconds. I better go faster then. Okay. All right. So at this point, we've done all the heavy lifting. We've engineered the product, and we currently have around, we're actually just under $300 million in pipeline currently, and expect to deliver on about 5 to 10% of that in the first 18 months of launch. We're post-revenue with Revive. We are started here in Colorado recently with a soft launch, and we're launching in California in 3 weeks, and we're ready to start manufacturing our home. I guess I don't have time to go through all this. I'll skip over it. I apologize. I'll just skip over it and just answer questions. We have a vast team of experienced builders, engineers, architects, retailers, and we're currently raising $5.5 million on a convertible note or a safe, preferably. We believe that we'll be able to achieve $12 million in revenue within the first 12 to 14 months with those funds. And would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Eric. Beautiful homes. Looking forward to the first one being built.
I think you had it in your slides, but I wanted to ask about the market size. Can you talk about that and who's buying these things? Is this an existing market? I would be curious. My dad and I have always been interested in tiny homes, so would be a little bit curious to hear about that market size.
Sure. So first, I'll restate that while we do have different configurations available and they are customizable to any scale, they both fit and don't fit the definition of a tiny home. So two of our pre-configured models are over 1,000 square feet, which effectively don't make them a tiny home. The current pipeline is primarily B2B clients, think hotel groups, hospitality operators, developers, et cetera, with a very small portion, and I mean under 1% of it currently being B2C clients, because it's not the focus. As you're probably aware, there's, if you've looked into me before, there's no note of Isso on my LinkedIn profile at this time. We do have a website, but it's beta and should be done in about a week or so. We've essentially been in stealth mode. So all the work that we've done so far has been behind the scenes. The attempt to actually, I'm going beyond the answer of your question. I apologize for that.
No, that's okay. I just want to understand, is there, so you mentioned that the customers are B2B, but what's the size of the market? Do you have any idea right now in terms of who, do they already buy stuff like this? Like what's the situation there?
Yeah, so our initial persona, to speak to that, is I'll use an acronym, and I apologize for that. It's called LOHAS, Lifestyles of Health and Sustainability. Essentially, people who are already educated on their pathway towards sustainability. So a family or individual or organization who has already decided that they want to move towards sustainability or beyond sustainability, but also who has the funds to do so. So those are our primary clients. At that point, it states in several places on the deck, and I'll admit that our product is an eco luxury offering. I can talk to the square foot cost right now. So we know that the landed cost in the United States is around $600 a square foot, depending on the trim model. It can go up or down, but we are moving towards a $250 a square foot option, again, in the next 18 to 20 months or so, by reverse engineering the tech stack to provide affordability. The total market, our SOM, I'll just talk to that if that's okay. So our SOM is around $350 million by year 4 ARR. This is a recognizable market based on the conversations we're already having with large multinational hospitality groups and some hints that we're having around our B2C client base. But we've also partnered recently with 2 significantly scaled development groups who are working internationally, who are looking to adopt our platform as well.
That's helpful. Thank you. Well, I guess one last question, and then I'm sure Dennis has probably a lot more better questions than I do. But one last question I was curious about is I've seen some companies doing homes in this nature. Can you talk a little bit about the circularity of the building materials? Is this something where there's a lot of like very, very minimal waste? Can you just talk about that? I would be curious to know if there's any particular technology there as well.
Yeah, I'll speak first to the manufacturing process of offsite construction or offsite assembly. So building these in factories and not on site. But the products themselves as well have been supplied from only the most discerning and unapologetically so sources. As an example, every single piece of wood that may go into the trim, so this includes floors, walls, ceilings, decks, facade of loop, is actually in partnership with a company called Cambium Carbon. And we're exclusively sourcing their Cambium Smart Wood. This wood, as an example, is a waste diverted material. There's no virgin wood felling to build loop, for example. In this instance, we're looking at red oak, but there's also the application of hemp wood as well, which is, of course, is a very sustainable material. So waste diverted materials everywhere that we can. The insulation is hemp cellulose with a layer of silica gel, the same aerogel blankets that are used on the International Space Station, as an example. So we're using, again, fairly sustainable, or as sustainable as we can find materials, exclusively so, actually. So the countertops are recycled paper, et cetera, the list goes on. So everything is either recycled, waste diverted, non-virgin, with the exception of the faucets and the appliances, because we do not build appliances.
Fair play.
Do you have comparison of your, I guess, I don't know, 1,000 square foot home compared to a normal one, like the environmental impact?
We're working on LCA with Greenly currently, so life cycle analysis of the product. But we just, again, we're fairly new. We're just launching our website, and we'll pop up on LinkedIn and social media here in the next 2 or 3 weeks. But no, we haven't finished that entirely. We know the cost comparisons And we know the efficacy of the build in terms of structural and engineering, and then again, a comparison relative to lead, well, and passive house. But for each material compared, no, I would be stating something fictitious if I gave you a number today.
Yeah, I think it would be interesting to see the environmental impact and also cost savings if everything you're saying is renewable or self-sufficient.
Yeah, we're working on that. There's a lot to dive into. It's a fairly large ecosystem and a fairly small footprint in terms of food production, water recycling, energy savings, et cetera, et cetera.
I jump in for a few questions. Great. Thank you, Eric. Thank you for the presentation and for how fun to give us a sneak peek of what you're working on. I love the home design on the second slide. It was really cool. I'd love to ask you about kind of the inspiration on that and everything, but I'm sure that's probably better for offline. And I assume the name Isso is inspired by the Japanese word meaning together. Is that
right?
Would that be yes? Okay, awesome. Curious on around the business. So you mentioned there's two businesses. There's a retrofit business and a prefabricated home business. What's the rationale for doing both? They both seem like pretty challenging markets, to be honest, to get into. Just curious, how you're balancing and why you made the choice to do both.
Yeah, so first it was an idea to get our tech and install teams' feet wet or hands dirty, whichever analogy you'd like to use. I really didn't want to wait until the homes were in the wild to determine how we would serve our clients out in the market. So the idea was we'd do a soft launch, a short run of maybe a dozen or so installs. But the relevance of applying the technology now in the customer service base, building out the back end, et cetera, has deemed itself invaluable. There's so much value in what we're doing currently. And the market demand for holistic approaches that are transparent is fairly sizable. So this is kind of like a why not give it a shot, to be honest with you. So right now, our team is learning how to engage with our clients, to respond quickly to inquiries, again, to build out our back end of tool sets. And to be honest with you, there's so much overlap between the two, as you might imagine, because the tech stack or the solution stack for Revive, which is the retrofit side of things, comes literally out of loop. So we're not searching for a new supply chain. We're not dealing with new partners. It's all the same technologies. So that was the indication to persist a little bit longer with it. And to be honest with you, I would say that because our Q4 this year soft launch is looking to yield significant results in terms of revenue, it's also something that I can't ignore. I would say that the intention initially was to not raise funds and to just grow this organically and to use the revenue of Revive to continue to bolster our work at Loop. But I've decided that because of how quickly things are starting to come together, it might make sense to get a cash injection to just accelerate all of this.
Great, thank you. And the more I hear about the business, it sounds like it's really like a design and integration play. Like when I think of prefabricated homes, I'm thinking about companies that are innovating on the production process and shortening the construction timeline, efficiency and cost, and that type of thing. That's not what you're doing. Is that correct?
It's a small part of it. Again, this started as a passion project for me, which as the word started to spread of what I was creating, designing, and my team started to build around the work that I wanted done for my family, the interest grew significantly, which led me to believe I was onto something. It's honestly, I think we're at a time that we have the technologies available or there are just a few other things that we need to innovate around. As an example, Eshow is also innovating around atmospheric water collection, energy creation through biomimetics, and food management in the residential footprint, because the technologies aren't there yet. So they're a part of our raise is to actually do our first POC manufacturing runs with those 3 technological solutions that we've engineered over the last little while. I just think that homes can be better across the board. I also think that there can be a solution that fits all in terms of not only cost and accessibility eventually, which is on our roadmap, but also the fact that they can nurture and heal. And again, it's just a consumer response as somebody who lives in a home and has a family, that we continue to churn out low cost, quick solution, boxed home solutions that are detrimental to both the environment and the people living within them. So that's the mission, to be honest with you. Is I know we can do better, and I intend to give it a try at least.
So this is like the first iteration is like the Tesla Roadster, but ultimately you aim to get to like a Model 3, where you're using the same design principles and you're able to mass produce things at scale and bring the cost down ultimately for the everyday consumer. Is that the...
Absolutely. We're intentionally stacking the first release of Loop with the highest trim models. I mean, we have voice activated faucets. They're a luxury. We don't absolutely need them. We're using top of the end Bosch and Thermador appliances. We don't absolutely need to use them. We're making this as beautiful and sexy as we can so that we have some adoption, again, from B2B clients and then some discerning B2C clients. But we also have designed this thing to be bomb-proof, almost literally, to both California and Florida engineering standards in sort of structural, mechanical, electrical, plumbing. We can swap out the steel frame, which is super robust and heavyweight, to a timber or other alternative material frame, as an example, to significantly reduce costs just on that one front. So we have our eyes again on around a $200, $250 square foot version 2. While this one will still maintain as well, or stick around at around $600 a square feet, though that $600 square foot cost landed, to be honest with you, is an early cost. I'm not considering automated manufacturing, supply chain leveraging in terms of volume purchases, et cetera. So I know that it will come down, but even at that, we're launching at $600 a square feet with around an 18 to 22% profit margin for Loop 1. So it's healthy enough to keep us going along, but I know we can sharpen our pencils as we go.
Great. And last question from my side. Can you talk a little bit about the team? I know you're just kind of still in the early stages, but who've assembled? There's lots of pieces you're working on. I'd love to know more about the team itself.
Yeah. So Ben, we have 7 full-time employees. We also have a total of 13 who are engaged as and when needed. We'll pull them in when revenue increases or when funding arrives, essentially. But our team spans a range from biomimetic architects and engineers to manufacturing partners. So that's actually, I'll stick with that one for just a second. I have a background in controlled environment agriculture and modular manufacturing. Brought my last company to manufacturing in 3 countries within 2 years of launch. So I've been through that before, but I didn't want to focus on it this time. So I found a regional manufacturing partner in modular homes and modular home setting here in the state of Colorado, where I'm located currently, who's got over 20 years of experience doing just that. So we've been provided a dedicated manufacturing team for the first 19 months as per our contract. So I don't need to sweat those details. So we have a deep experience in modular home manufacturing, logistics, transportation, et cetera, supply chain management. And then the rest of it is really on engineering and product design, which is part me and part another one of our team members. And then the rest of it is storytelling and narrative, marketing and PR, if you will. That gives you the gist of it. Other than that, on the Revive side, we've stolen away to one current. Be careful what I say about this. So one current and one ex-Tesla / Solar City team member have joined the Revive team for the installs. We've got them excited about that platform, and we've just picked up a national lead for Revive as well, an ex-WeWork executive who helped bring that company international, back in the day in terms of real estate procurement and team building, to help build out our team starting in California, but then across the nation as well.
Great. Thank you very much, Eric. I think maybe if we want to wrap up, we can ask all the startup presenters and our panelists to share their favorite or most excited about startup from tonight. How about we start with Eric, since you just presented?
Oh boy, sure. Going back to, well, I'll pick on Len for a second. My vertical farming background had me working with providers in nanobubble technologies, and I can speak to the efficacy and almost magical characteristics that we experienced in our farms previously. I know that Len, your work is currently outside of the scope of the residential footprint, but there's also tremendous opportunity there as well on both the vertical farming side and Loops Homes, et cetera, et cetera. So I see a lot of potential synergies in Len's pitch. Obviously, well, everybody, to be honest with you, it was all great. But I relate to Len the most because I've played with those technologies before and they're really cool.
Thanks.
Great. Len, housing the
So outside of our technology, I was intrigued by what Mark was talking about. I can think of places to take that outside the industries, depending on how it works. But he's got a tiger by the tail. If he can do that, it could be world changing, which is very cool. That's what turns me on.
Awesome. Thank you. And Mark, if you're with us.
Well, I had ideas for both Eric and Len. So Eric, I just sent you a link. Take a look at this. This is brand new. Nobody's seen it. It's truly blackout windows that are true blackout, like 100% blackout. And the manufacturer's in Minnesota. And if you're interested in adding that or considering adding it to your houses, I personally believe that if you sleep in total blackout rooms, it's good for your health. So, if you're going to also address everything, health is a piece of it. Len, I sent you that link to Empire Organics. If you send me an email, then I can just forward that email to the team and they can engage with you immediately. Because you're right, what we have is a machine that actually delivers, and that it's patented. And this is, I think, the key to making even your life easier. So we would love to, I'm sure we would love to collaborate with you because we're doing similar work. So I'd like to just hook you up with my team. And I thank everybody for, just being interested in letting me even come to this, including Ward. I appreciate him.
We love it. Love all the connections that we're making right on the show. And last but not least, Ibin, before we move into our panelists.
Thank you. I think I really like the idea of Eric's company. I think I'm always interested in future housing, and I think this is, I would say, I'm very looking forward to the company launch in Q4.
Thank you very much. All right. Silas.
I just add one quick item for Eric real quick. I'm so sorry. Eric, can't you just get orders and work with a bank? Because it's real estate. So isn't there a way of getting purchase orders and taking that paper and turning it into money? I've done that many times in the past for other industries, never yours. But I would think that if you have the right bank, you might not need investors as much as you might just need a great bank.
Can I answer that question very quickly? I'll say that we've met with several A lenders, including banks already, but we're also trying to not reveal too much here. We're working with a large developer on a 360 home project, which is intended to launch in March next year. So it's likely that we'll be off to the races then already. And they've adopted a very unique financing model for homeowners that includes decentralized finance, but I'll stop at that. So yeah, we're looking at all the angles. It's possible we won't need to raise funds, but I'm certainly excited to get all of these things going, particularly Revive, because there's so much demand in the state of California already, and we've just set foot there. So, but thank you, Mark.
Awesome. I can jump in. So my favorite of all of the pitches today and all the startup ideas in general would be Ishow with Eric. I obviously I mentioned a little bit. I'm a big fan of design and houses. My dad's a carpenter by trade, so there's a little bit of interest there. But I do think there's a couple things that are interesting to me about it. Is if you can achieve this, the outcome, kind of the roadmap that you mentioned, kind of following the Tesla model, if you will. I believe you could really see a really big impact, not just on the climate and people living sustainably, but also lowering the barrier to entry for homeownership, which is something that people of my generation complain about all the time. It's just extremely difficult. So that'd be my hope in the long run, is that you can get to that point. Obviously, understanding to focus on B2B at the beginning. I also really think that the idea of the recurring revenue from the other services is a really brilliant way to help kind of pad the profits to keep things going, and just making it easy for people, right? There are a lot of people who are willing to be sustainable, but they're not going to spend 40 hours a week researching everything they have to do to become sustainable. They want somebody to have it done for them. So I think that that's really, generally speaking, quite interesting. My biggest concerns in the future would be just talent. Can you find enough people to install these? Because obviously there's not necessarily a lot of skilled labor to go around, especially if you start scaling massively. So that'd be the only big concern I have. But otherwise, I think it was a great pitch. I really love what you guys are doing, and looking forward to seeing where you go in the future. On to Dennis.
Round it out. So first of all, thank you everybody for the presentations. Really great group of mission-driven companies doing a diverse set of things. So really enjoyed today's program. My selections are a little bit biased by the work that I do in advanced materials and energy transformation and this type of thing. Again, very intrigued by, I would say, rain ions is really interesting for me. Intrigued by what Mark is working on. At the same time, no offense, Mark, also very skeptical of the solution. But what makes it interesting to me is obviously a coating is pretty simple and easy and can be applied to a variety of things. So there's a lot of interesting applications, I think, for this technology and ways to make an impact. Also, having an automotive background, I'm really interested in those specific applications. But I agree that, I think one challenge that they'll have as a company going forward is if these claims are true, and this technology even has a fraction of the potential that he's alluding to, it could very well lead to death by testing. Many large companies asking for multiple tests over and over, and that can be quite time consuming and costly. So I think thinking through how to get past that, of course, is really important. Also really enjoyed the presentation from Len and Nano Gas. Really interested in that. Would love to talk offline and understand applications to my line of work, and appreciated BitVisor and what they're doing as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Dennis. And yes, a huge thank you to all of you who presented your businesses. Very different, but I want to say a little bit refreshing to see some businesses that's not pure SaaS. So that's always nice to see. Yeah, absolutely. All the very inspiring people working on these big climate tech problems. And thank you to Silas and to Dennis for joining us today to provide the very insightful questions. So really appreciate it. And thank you for tuning in. And hopefully we see the connections come to fruition from this session. So wish you a great rest of the day or beginning of your day, depending on where you're located. And thank you very much. Bye-bye.